What's up, guys, and welcome to another edition of Syracuse Sports, presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. My name is Brent Axe. Amazing to have you on board here. Yes, I'm still recovering from our trip to Vegas. What an incredible time that was. And I wanted to say right off the bat, a big thank you to our Syracuse Sports Insiders, to our Syracuse football fans, to anybody that said hello, especially at our event. Man, Erica Shody, you know that Ashodi meatball family, baby. Erica Shody, who is the assistant GM of the Rock House and Oak Room Bar, where we had our Syracuse Sports Insider meetup, could not have been any more accommodating. Man, we thought like 30 people would show up to that, and there was well over 100 that came through. So thank you. Thank you to all of our Syracuse Sports Insiders that came to our meetup in Las Vegas, who we saw in Las Vegas. Maybe we saw at the stadium, on the Strip, wherever it was. An incredible trip and a memory of a lifetime for Syracuse football fans. I mean, look, if Syracuse had lost that game, you're in Vegas, so you're still going to have a good time. But the fact that you made that trip, made the effort, fans came from all over the country and saw that game and that win. I mean, you're never going to forget that. We had two of our couples that are Syracuse Sports Insiders. Shout out to Randy, shout out to Michael and their new brides who got married in Las Vegas. I mean, come on. How amazing is that? So what a trip. But life moves on, right? And Syracuse plays NC State coming up this weekend. And guys, there's still something that really concerns me with this football team. Now, Syracuse is 4-1, bottom line, right? They've won the games they needed to, drop one to Stanford by 2 points. But 3 of the last 4 games for the Orange have been decided by 3 points or less, with that Holy Cross game wedged in there. Overtime against UNLV. We mentioned they lose the Stanford game. Georgia Tech came down to it. This is not a team that's getting a lot of separation right now. And one of the issues that's keeping teams in games, and particularly kept UNLV in that game, you know where I'm going here. I hate to be that guy, but special teams is just flat out an emergency at this point, particularly punt coverage. Now, shout out to Jaden No, who won the kicker competition. He comes in, he hit his extra points, he hit a 21-yard field goal that Syracuse needed. He did his job. But that punt coverage is alarming. UNLV got 14 free points in that game from punt coverage, the touchdown, and then another punt block that set up an easy touchdown for UNLV. And we've seen it. Fran Brown has said he's consulted with people that he trusts in the game that know special teams. I wanted to talk to James Volano this week. I wanted to talk to Jack Stonehouse this week, and they were not made available by Syracuse Athletics. Emily did talk to Jade No, so you should read that story and get his perspective on things. But look, I can watch film, but I don't see things the same way that football coaches do. And what I'm seeing is they're just getting pushed around. They're getting overwhelmed. There is clearly something on film that teams are seeing that they are exploiting. And NC State wants to be the next one here. So, look, Syracuse is 4-1. When you have Kyle McCord, you're always in the game. When you got LaQuint Allen on one leg, dragging dudes across the goal line, you're always in the game. When you got Fidel Diggs, who made a huge stop against Georgia Tech and made a massive stop in overtime that held UNLV to a field goal, which allowed Syracuse to get in position for that LaQuint Allen touchdown. Look, you can't doubt the heart, the guts, the determination, the dart of Syracuse football. But you know what is in dart? Accountability. And special teams has got to figure this out, because as somebody, you guys know, Uncle Brent, free throws matter, special teams matter. Those are 2 of my big things. You can't let special teams cost you games. Look, everybody's going to miss a kick here or there, but special teams is field position. Special teams is critical. It is 1/3 of the game, and you just know the teams that pride themselves on special teams and the ones that say they do but don't execute. So Syracuse thus far has gotten away with this. Remember, they had 3 missed field goals against Holy Cross. You're going to win that game because it's Holy Cross. Georgia Tech, they had a number. They couldn't field an onside kick. That kick went out of bounds. They have had major, consistent issues on special teams. And with Syracuse on the road again this week at NC State, on the road at Pitt on a Thursday night, you can't let this cost you games. So far it hasn't, but how long can they keep getting away with this? That is a big thing on my mind with Syracuse football right now. And hopefully on Saturday night, when we're doing Syracuse football postgame after that game, we're not talking about a game that was cost by special teams, but it is a major, major concern right now. So more to come on that for sure. I'm going to hear from our Syracuse Sports Insiders a little later here in the pod. I pulled some of your great comments that we'll react to here, and you see it on your screen if you're watching on YouTube. But being a Syracuse Sports Insider, first of all, means like you can come hang with us at cool events like we did in Las Vegas, and just so incredible to meet so many of you that night. But it also means you can text me directly. I text you tidbits, information, opinions, breaking news. If I have it, you guys get it first. And the questions, the comments, the opinions, the suggestions that we get from you guys. Mike Waters and I are going to bring it up here shortly about suggestions that you can put into place for Syracuse, which is looking for a little help, frankly. Orange Madness is not going to happen this year for basketball, so that's where we come in. We'll solve the problem for them, right? Pass it along to Syracuse. Bing, bang, boom. We're glad to be of service, right? But being a Syracuse Sports Insider is this amazing back and forth. It's a growing community, as we saw in Vegas, and I see it on the pod, and I see it every day in corresponding with you guys. So, hey, listen, we love that you're a Syracuse Sports Insider. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Tell fellow Orange fans that you're part of this cool group, and we want to see it get bigger and better going forward. It's just $3.99 a month to be able to get all the benefits of being a Syracuse Sports Insider. You could try it free for 2 weeks, and then, as mentioned, just $3.99 a month after that. So, without further ado, we're talking a lot of football, right? But it's a little chillier at night. It's October. It's spooky season. You know what that means, right? That means basketball is around the corner. Mike Waters was at ACC Tip-Off in Charlotte this week and gathered a lot of great stuff on both men's and women's basketball. So what do you say? We talked to Mike about that. We will do that shortly. But as you guys know, we like to feature local music here on the podcast. Programming note, by the way, we don't do that on the live shows. When we do a live pod, post games and live pods, it's a little more complicated to do that. But the recorded pods, if you will, we've been highlighting your original music on the show, and it has been awesome, and so many of you have reached out, but continue to reach out. All the information is in the show notes on how you can get in touch with me. Our Syracuse Sports Insider certainly know how to get in touch, but all the info in the show notes on how you can send me your original music to be featured here on this show. Our featured band today is a local band from Syracuse. They've been featured on the pod before, and we're going to feature them again here. The Exploding Flowers. That's a terrific band name, by the way. Time is Tight. You're going to hear a little bit of it here to intro Mike Waters, and then we'll play the whole song at the end of the podcast. We interrupt football season for basketball. You knew it was coming, folks. It's a little chillier out there. Basketball is in the air, and Mike Waters is here to discuss all of that from ACC Tip-Off in Charlotte, gathering of all the ACC basketball folks down there. Michael, how are you, sir?
Brent, I'm doing great. I'm starting to run on fumes, though. This is day 3 for me down here in Charlotte. It began on Tuesday with the Women's Media Day, and Wednesday was both a little women and a little men, and the commissioners forum in between. And we wrap up today with the last 12 men's teams.
People don't understand all these interviews and conversations. It takes it. You know, you got to be in shape for this stuff, man. You got to be sharp. You got to be on your game. The athletes do their thing. We do our thing, right? We got to be mentally strong and fit to do these things.
Exactly. You know, you just got to find ways to fight through and ask that next tough question.
You mentioned it, Mike. You know, we've got a lot to get into on the men's side, but you did talk to Coach Jack and the Syracuse players that were there on Tuesday. And let's start there. I mean, the big question, of course, is Dyaisha Fair is gone, and how do you replace her? And the answer seems to be you don't. You find another way, or by committee, or however you want to put it. But I was intrigued, Mike, and I'm sure you were as well, how Coach Jack described it, and then basically like they've got to play a different way this upcoming season. How did she discuss it?
She described it as, the ball's not going to be as sticky, meaning that it's not going to be in just one person's hands, or it's not going to be in anybody's hands for a very long period of time. The ball has to move. And, she said last year she was perfectly happy for that ball to be in Dyaisha Fair's hands because, no one was going to take it from her. And Dyaisha was the one who could always find a way to either get her own shot or create something for somebody else. So, yeah, you had a ball-dominant guard each of the last 2 years. Obviously, no one is replacing Dyaisha Fair on their own. So people have to increase their roles, step into a slightly new role, but no one is going to step into Dyaisha Fair's role. So, she says, it's going to have to do it as a team. Obviously, there are some a year last year with an NCAA tournament berth, a first-round win, and a gritty loss to a talented Connecticut team in the second round. So it'd be an interesting group, led by Georgia Woolley. Georgia will, I think, likely your leading scorer. Girl's going to get a lot of shots. Kyra Woods back up front. You bring back Sophie Burrows, who had a very good freshman year, so we'll see how she does. And one player that intrigues me is Dominique Camp, who missed all of last year with a knee injury after transferring to Syracuse from Akron. A girl that goes back with Felisha Legette-Jack back to days at Buffalo. So I think she is a dynamic little guard. Doesn't score like Dyaisha, but she can really push the ball. And, this team might have to run. So it'll be an interesting group. And it was really good to get down here on Tuesday in order to speak to Felisha Legette-Jack.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, as we'll discover as the season goes, that Syracuse had so many fourth quarter comebacks that were driven by Fair, and you knew she was getting the ball. And she could be 0 for 13 going into that fourth quarter. She's getting the ball. So who steps up in that role is going to be curious to see. I mean, Georgia Woolley's kind of the first person who probably puts her hand up in that case, but that dynamic is going to be fascinating to watch for sure. So, Mike, as you said, you've been there for a few days, and today was Syracuse's turn in terms of Coach Autry, J.J. Starling, Chris Bell, doing all the rounds, all the shows, the media, everything. What stood out from what you heard from those guys today?
There was a couple of issues that seemed to be on repeat. And one for Adrian Autry seemed to be experience. He really was, pushing the experience that this team has. JJ and Chris, obviously a year older. Last year's team was so young. They seemed to make a point of it in the transfer portal. They brought in older, experienced guys. And this was a really interesting that I asked Red about the transfers, especially because even though they're experienced, they don't have experience within the Syracuse program. And I asked him about that, and it was interesting. He said they were really conscious of that in going to the portal. They did a lot of scouting, and they tried to bring in guys who play the way they want them to play here, that either fit Syracuse's style or the style that Adrian Autry wants to play. So it's maybe not going to be as much of a transition for these guys. He's not bringing in somebody who was at a program that ran the Princeton offense and Virginia's defense, and it was, whether they played a little slow or whatever, they played the way he wants to play. And, I think that definitely applies to somebody like Jaquan Carlos, the point guard from Hofstra, so they're used to the system. They didn't have a big ramp up in order to get used to anything here. So I thought that was interesting. They really did their homework on these guys.
It's interesting, Mike, because I saw a couple interviews myself, everything that was streaming from down there, and the Carlos came up, and as it was presented to JJ and Chris Bell, who were in the interview, Judah Mintz was a guy who, he ate up the ball and had the ball in his hands a lot and was a scoring point guard. Carlos is definitely more of a distributor. The assist numbers from last year, now they both said he can get a bucket, he can get to the hoop if he wants to, but that dynamic alone fascinates me. And it just feels like from some of the things that Autry has said, not only at ACC Tip-Off, but through the offseason, like, the difference there and how this team seemingly is going to push the ball more and spread the ball out more. You put an Eddie Lampkin in the middle and how he can dish it out. Chris Bell was asked by our friend Jeff Goodman, about being the best three-point shooter in the ACC, and he's like, I am. Like, he's got that kind of confidence as a player.
That sounds like Chris Bell.
Yes, he's got that kind of, and started to show that at the end of last year. And the dynamics in his game. JJ said that he's been shooting a lot more over the summer and certainly wants to add that dynamic to his game. But, Mike, Syracuse has the same I don't want to say problem, but Syracuse has the same puzzle to solve as a lot of teams, and you touched on it there a little bit. There's a lot of new faces here to integrate and get in rhythm. And I know they had the summer workouts, and it seems like they've been doing a lot of stuff off the court to build that chemistry, which you hope it translates onto the court. But that's the simplest thing to look at and say they've got to figure out is how do you integrate all these new guys and their styles of play?
Yeah, they do, and they're not alone in that, like you said. But one interesting thing was brought up as I was listening to another reporter ask a question of Brent Axe, and Brent agreed with this in a way that for sometimes, like I think it's that integrating somebody into your program and if they're new is something that coaches sometimes worry about a little bit, but the players seem to adapt well. And then one reason is they change high schools these days, like they're changing T-shirts.
That's a good point.
They some of these kids bounce around. They'll play for a couple different AAU programs, so they're used to like jumping around and having a new set of teammates from from year to year, or you go from your high school team to your AAU team and then back again, and it's not the same group. So I don't know if it's as a big a deal to the players. Now, what the players may not understand is like, oh, it's okay. It's just another group of guys, and I can assimilate real easily here, and we all get along. But I think the coaches are aware you'll be playing better together the more you play together. And so, a lot of teams that have a lot of new guys. Listen, the guinea pig is going to be Louisville. I mean, holy cow! Pat Kelsey, new coach there. The entire roster has been turned over. I think they have 12 transfers and 1 freshman.
Wow.
So that'll be a real test case. I mean, how well will that team come together and how long will it be? We could be looking at a Louisville team that could be okay from the start, but they could be really good in February. So,
Mike,
the Syracuse guys, they're only adding 4 compared to 12 at Louisville.
Right. That's a good point.
And we'll see how many of those guys are in what their roles are. How many are in the starting lineup? Interesting. One of those transfers, and I'll just pick up a little bit more time here on this question. I asked Kyle Smith, the coach at Stanford, what kind of player Syracuse is getting in Eddie Lampkin, because of course Eddie Lampkin was at Colorado, and Stanford saw him a couple times last season. So Kyle Smith said, he's such a great passer, and that's really his strength. Like, one-on-one he can score for you, but he really gets dangerous if you dare to double team him, because then he says he's always going to find the open guy. He said he expects Syracuse to run a lot through Eddie. And the interesting part will be when Eddie can attract a double team, that according to Kyle Smith of Stanford anyway, that's when he gets really dangerous because he finds the open guy so quick.
Intriguing. A new guy, technically, though he's been on the roster since last year, Mike. We learned some news about Chance Westry today in that. So last year, of course, he missed the whole season with a knee injury, and it's a common question that we get from fans. What's going on with Chance? Is he healthy? And by all accounts, had a great summer, was getting back into the flow of things. But Adrian Autry said today that he's had a little bit of a setback here. So what's the deal with that, and when do we anticipate he'll be ready to go?
Yeah, a little bit of information, if not a lot of detail, from Adrian Autry this morning about Chance Westry. He just said he's dealing with an illness, and he's going to be, been out or will be out a couple of weeks. And that's what Adrian Autry said at the podium in the 15-minute room there where they have the TV cameras and everything. And I pressed him on it a little bit after that when they move into what is known as the breakout room. And they're actually at desk, and they sit in there for like half an hour, and the players are in there as well. And he said he couldn't really talk any more about it because of HIPAA regulations. Now, I'm not exactly sure if HIPAA regulations really apply, but I do know coaches are definitely reticent about talking about players, especially injuries and beyond injury, if it's something more like an illness, So he didn't even want to give much more information on that, but he did look me right in the eye and said he'll be fine. It's only going to be a little bit, and I think he used the word mild. So I don't want to speculate. I'll let folks out there speculate, but there's a number of different types of illnesses that could put anybody down for a week or two, and especially with an athlete, you may not want to push them right back into up and down the court competition. So we'll see. I mean, it's a real blow for Chance because That poor kid cannot catch a break.
I know. Yeah,
You know,
snake
his
bit.
freshman year at Auburn, knee injury, doesn't play it past January 4th or something. Last year doesn't play at all because of a different knee injury. And, if anybody needs practice time and court time, it's him. And now he's sidelined again for a little bit, but hopefully he's back soon. The opener's less than a month away.
Yeah, you got an exhibition game October 26th, another one just a few days after that, and the opener is approaching. So we'll see how Chance integrates himself back into it. A couple other notes on Syracuse, Mike, before we broaden out a little bit here. We also heard that Orange Madness will not take place this year, kind of that supplement. It used to be Midnight Madness, then it became Orange Madness, and we've seen different versions of this and what Syracuse tries to do. It's very fan-friendly, but they're taking a break this year. And Autry actually had some insight into that he wants to put his own spin on it, right?
Yeah, I think without saying it, I think they're aware of the fact that, folks like us and some fans were aware of, it hadn't been as exciting in recent years. And had kind of become formulaic. And they were just repeating the same thing. And you can't do that if you're looking to, put on a real innovative and exciting event that's not only going to be entertaining for fans, but it's something the players are going to get into and have fun with. And also, let's face it, it can be a recruiting tool. Mm-hmm. You bring a recruit up to campus on that weekend and you take them to an Orange Madness and you want them to be blown away. You don't want them sitting on the sidelines bored and looking at their phone while a 3-on-3 scrimmage is taking place or a shooting contest that's kind of, gets dull after a while. Let's be honest. The Orange Madness in recent years had a lot of down moments, and you can't have that. This has to be Cirque du Soleil or something along those lines. Heck, Pink put on a heck of a concert at the Dome recently. I wouldn't mind seeing Adrian Autry harnessed up to something flying around. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, I do appreciate the fact that they want to try to make it better. And so you take a year off, a step back. Some of the best Orange Madnesses or Midnight Madnesses were held at Manley Fieldhouse, when you could still go in there and you had a basketball court and you could put it there because it was a smaller, more intimate environment. The fans were closer and a smaller crowd was great still, at Manley. The smallest crowd you get in an Orange Madness is just tough in that big cavernous building. It's tough to build excitement. So I think they really have to figure out, something. And whether maybe you can do it and still have it at the Dome, maybe it's something that needs to be taken off campus, held someplace else. I don't know, but I get the feeling. I also talked with the deputy director of athletics, Tori Ball, and he echoed a lot of the comments that Adrian Autry made. And I think they're looking at anything and everything.
Now, no bigger Midnight Madness moment at Manley than when AO brought the backboard down and shattered it. And we have a picture of that up in your story on syracuse.com, so people can check that out if they don't remember. But I think it's kind of the same issue like the NBA All-Star Game has. Like, it's stale. Mm-hmm. You don't want anybody to get hurt, so you're not going to push it in a scrimmage, or even they get nervous when they do dunk contests and things like that, because obviously you want to make sure everybody comes out of these things healthy. And whoever's got a sparked, fresh idea for something like this, get in touch with Syracuse. Get in touch with Tori Ball. Hit him on social media. Mike brought up an interesting proposition.
Send them to us. We'll put them on another podcast.
Absolutely.
We will go through readers' ideas together on a podcast. So email me or Brent. I'm at mwaters@syracuse.com. Brent, you're at Axe at syracuse.com. Let's do this.
Yeah, great thing for our Syracuse Sports Insiders to chime in about as well. Send us a text on that, and we'll forward the ideas up to Syracuse, talk about it here on the pod, and see if we can come up with something. I think you hit on an intriguing idea. Maybe you bring it away from the Dome. Is there somewhere else you can go to make it more of a convention, if you will, a fan event, as opposed to just kind of the formulaic stuff we've seen? So that we learned today. No Orange Madness this year, but certainly we're thinking about it, recalibrating, and we'll see what those creative minds come up with out there for next year. Mike, I was intrigued to see John Shire, the coach at Duke. I was happy to be asked about Malik Brown, and we were talking about transfers, right? And that's one of those oh yeah moments that Malik Brown's on that Duke team. And by all accounts, and of course, coaches are just, lavishing praise on everybody at the tip-off, and everybody's going undefeated and they're going to win the ACC. I get that. But Shire certainly is happy that Malik Brown is on his team. I got that distinct impression.
Yeah, it's like he was asked about it yesterday, and the media was like, I'm so glad you asked about Malik Brown. He doesn't get talked about enough, because I guess probably no one's getting talked about a lot at Duke besides Cooper Flagg, right?
I was going to say, yeah. They got a couple top 10 picks on that team.
He'll suck a little bit of oxygen out of the room, but that's okay. But John Shire did praise Malik, and it's stuff that Syracuse fans are going to, immediately sound familiar. He talked about how many deflections he gets. He said guys don't like to go up in practice. They don't like to go up against Malik when Malik's defending them. That he gets more deflections than anybody on the team by far. And I'm like, well, no duh.
It sounds familiar.
That sounds really familiar. It's like, yes, that's definitely Malik Brown. So, he said he can, playing him at the 4. He's playing him opposite the freshman big man. The kid, I think, that played for South Sudan in the Olympics. He said he could also use him a little bit at the 5. So it sounds like a role very similar to the one that he was playing at Syracuse, maybe not so much last year when, after Naheem went down, he was exclusively at the 5. But still, it'll be interesting to see exactly what his role ends up being, and whether he's starting or coming in off the bench, how many minutes he has. But with all the other talent on that team, it definitely looks like Malik's just going to fit into that role player, defender, rebounder, jack of all trades sort of thing. And, they've got enough guys who can put the ball in the bucket.
Mike, you had a chance, and people can read all about this on syracuse.com, but I wanted to follow up with you about your conversation with Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner. You got a little one-on-one time with him down there, and, how much can you pack into a 10, 15-minute conversation with the commish, but, you'll take that one-on-one time. So tell me what you guys talked about, and just how you found him to be. Was that your first experience interviewing him one-on-one?
I interviewed him one-on-one 2 years ago when I was down here at the same event. It's really nice that, for some of the veteran beat writers in the league, that he'll take a little time with us, especially if we're down here for more than a day or a day or two, and they know it. I always find him very personable, very down to earth. He's not a man that's at all, there doesn't seem to be a lot of ego with him. Sometimes you're like, you end up with just a conversation, like he'll ask about your family and your kids, and he'll tell you about his when you ask, in return, you're like, this is all nice and pleasant and everything, but we're eating into my time. So you're like, I kind of need to get to the issues of the day. And then when we do, he's really thoughtful about stuff. We talked a lot about the future of college athletics, and especially how, we're trying to figure out a way to how is the football going to get settled, and with the SEC and the Big Ten just becoming behemoths in this whole sporting landscape, and how teams in the Big 12 and ACC can avoid, being left out, and in fact, not only, remaining in it, but also being able to be competitive. How can you remain competitive in the future? And we talked about Syracuse Chancellor Kent Severud, the proposal that he's been backing, and there's just the fact that Chancellor Severud kind of went away from his usual norm, where he stepped out publicly and put his name and voice behind this one idea. And we talked about the merits of that, and a couple of the other ideas that have been floated recently. He's definitely working hard behind the scenes on behalf of the entire ACC, all of his member schools, because, while a Clemson, a Florida State, a North Carolina, even a Virginia, but at least I think they know they're going to have a future,
right,
in whatever college athletics becomes. But he also oversees a league that includes schools like Wake Forest, Boston College, Syracuse, and you have to worry about the future. If it's a 72-team football league, okay, Syracuse is in it. But if someone agrees to like if the SEC and Big Ten only want to let in a few more schools, and it's just a 50-team, future, is Syracuse necessarily going to make that cut? Does Wake Forest make that cut? And so Jim Phillips is really working hard to make sure all of his schools have a future.
One thing that was certainly brought up there and Phillips addressed, Mike, I want to get your thoughts on. So the ACC had a little bit of a scheduling issue, right? In terms of the tournament, the net rankings. We saw how other conferences, the Big 12, game the system last year to get maybe a more favorable net ranking. And we've seen the net rankings flaws have been exposed for all to see, right? So what's the ACC doing about it, I guess is the question.
Well, they're doing a lot. They're trying to do what they can. They're trying to figure out what they can do. Jim Phillips talked with me, and he also talked here yesterday about, they brought in a lot of consultants, some experts, maybe, some of the folks that understand the metrics, NCAA net, stuff like that. They talk to the coaches about how to schedule. Are there different ways to schedule? But as Red Autry pointed out today, listen, you could be told schedule like this, schedule like that, but you also have to schedule according to what kind of team you have.
Yeah.
If you have a young team or new team or something, you don't want to come out of the gates, playing 5 top 20 teams in your first 10 games. You'd have a lot of great games, but you'd probably also end up with 5 losses. Then you're out of the tournament there anyway. Listen, I think the ACC's big problem, last year they had 5 teams get NCAA bids. It was the third straight year they had only 5 teams get bids to the NCAA tournament. That's a problem, right? But you can hire all the consultants and talk about metrics and stuff like that. But, the one thing you got to do, win some games. Pittsburgh ended up just outside the tournament last year, just barely on the wrong side of the bubble. They lost at home to Missouri, which went winless in the SEC. You can't lose that game at home. And I know it's early in the year, but that's the kind of game that even on Selection Sunday, the committee's going to look back at and go, you lost to a team that went winless in the SEC. How do we justify putting you in? It's and also that game is going to. So all these, you want to try to game the system like what the Big 12 did? They might have gamed the system, but they won. And they didn't take those cupcake games and win by 3. They took those cupcake games and they did win by 25. So, you have to still make it work on the court. You can try to schedule smartly and wisely, or maybe even deviously. But at the end of the day, no matter how you schedule, you got to go win games. Syracuse last year doesn't even get close to the bubble because they had, not only do they have losses to Tennessee and Gonzaga and, forget the other non-conference loss. There might have been another one out there that was a big one, but then even in conference, you have losses to Wake and Virginia and Carolina and Duke. That weren't just losses; they were blowouts. Mm-hmm. You can't take on that many blowouts and think your metrics are going to look good. So I've talked with Adrian Autry about that, and he's like, he goes, he thinks that was part of the youth of last year's team coming through. That sometimes when they got a little bit of adversity hit them in the face, or they hit a rough patch in the game, they didn't react well all the time. They didn't know how to react. And he thinks this year with a more experienced group, maybe they lose a game, but they're not going to get blown out in that game. And that'll help their metrics.
Mike, great work down there. Always appreciate your time and your insight. And Mike and I talk all the time, but if we're talking formally here on the pod and it's October, basketball, as much as we're really enjoying the Fran Brown effect on Syracuse football, Adrian Autry and the basketball team and Felisha Legette-Jack and the women's team have entered the chat, and soon enough, hoops will be back in our lives here full time. Mike, I appreciate you coming on the pod. As always, keep up the good work down there and up here, and we'll see you soon, my friend.
Brent, it's always fun talking to you, and I can't believe I made it through a podcast with you in October without you mentioning pumpkin ale. Goodbye.
Thanks again to Mike Waters joining us from Charlotte, talking some hoops, baby, at ACC Tip-Off. Let us hit the Syracuse Sports Insiders, not literally hit you. I wouldn't do that to you guys, of course, but hit your comments here because you guys always are sending great questions, comments, opinions, and thoughts. The stream of consciousness that comes from Syracuse fans. You should see the texts during the games when I can't even keep up with you guys. And let's just say that you're blowing off some steam when you're watching Syracuse football with Uncle Brent. I wanted to highlight a few of your questions here to end the pod today. And this one comes from Guy, who says, man, poor Westry. Murphy's Law in living color. Yeesh. He meant to comment as well on Kent Severud the other day. Am I the only one who finds it a bit ironic that a guy who doesn't seem all that interested in sports let the one billionaire NIL person who had each SEC school probably has at least 5 walk out the door, that referring to Adam Weitzman, of course, and now he's in charge of making sure Syracuse doesn't fade into obscurity. Guy, it's a fair point. The other day when I heard that Kent Severud was going to have a media gathering with local media, in this case it was on Zoom, I fell out of my chair because Kent Severud does not talk to the media. Short of like public appearances, ribbon cuttings, he will show up. There's been a lot of coaching press conferences the past few years at Syracuse, right? Jim Boeheim's retirement, Autry's introduction, Felisha Legette-Jack, new coaches that have come in. He'll show up at those and make a comment, but he does not talk to the media. I have requested to talk to Kent Severud more times than I can count on this podcast and other places. It's always cordial. It's always polite. It's not like, they're just stoning you. It's just not his style. So for Kent Severud to stick his neck out and support and advocate for the College Sports Football League that he is behind and is one of the ambassadors for is stunning, frankly. But it also shows you that a guy who, look, he's at the games and he certainly understands that Syracuse University sports is the front porch of the university and represents it more than anything, right? And that's no offense to the great academics at Syracuse University, but sports is what represents you in this world more than anything. He gets it and he understands it and he doesn't like what he's seeing. His comments were insightful. His comments were educational. I think in particular what he said about the House versus NCAA settlement, he called it a house of cards. It will fall apart. It is subject to future litigation. There are so many that are counting on the settlement, which basically will force the Power Four and other schools to pay out anywhere of $20 to $22 million per year. And that number is only going to go up. So you're directly paying the athletes, which they couldn't do before. All these schools want to bring NIL in-house, right? And they're still trying to figure all this out. Severud sees it as a house of cards. What Severud, I would encourage you to read up on it and read the stories that Chris Carlson and I put up on syracuse.com about this, but it's almost innovation by preservation. He wants to see all 136 football programs still in the club. He wants to see regional rivalries return. Who doesn't, right? I mean, Syracuse going to Vegas was great. That was a non-conference game, but the ACC games at Stanford, at Cal, like what are we doing here, right? Get Penn State, get West Virginia back on the schedule. Under their proposal, regional rivalries will come back into play. So there's a cutoff. There's essentially 72 programs that are in this league, and the rest are trying to play their way up. It's almost like relegation in soccer, right? Well, there's also something out there called Project Rudy, which was put together by some venture capitalist firms, some former Disney executives who are promising to flush college football with about $9 billion. And if you know anything about venture capitalists and that whole world, they're going to want a return on their investment. So I would proceed very cautiously into just taking that kind of money. But none of this happens. These alternate proposals, I think everybody can agree the current model is not sustainable, but none of this happens unless 2 people get on board. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, and Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten. More Sankey than Petitti, though the Big Ten's influence is certainly right up there with the SEC. And Sankey has made no indications that either one of these proposals out there, Project Rudy or the College Football League, that Severud and others are backing, he's interested in being a part of it. So until those 2 are on board, they're both dead on arrival. But Guy makes a good point. Of all the people to stick their neck out on this, Kent Severud would be the last one on the list, but he understands the importance of getting skin in the game in this case. From Mark, who says, an excellent move in my opinion. This is about Orange Madness kind of taking a pause for a year. They have not been great events, kind of flat, did not generate much excitement, and small crowds. Look, I get why Syracuse is doing this. You don't want players to get hurt at these things. There's only so much you can do. I brought it up to Mike earlier. It's like the NBA All-Star game. There's only so much you can do with these things. But fans want access. Fans want to see these guys. They want to get autographs. They want to say hello. They want to take pictures. We're in the selfie era, right? I think it's more about that than a three-point contest or a dunk contest or the basketball part of it. Here's the other thing. We have so much access now. Midnight Madness used to literally be the introduction of the team, right? you would hear about recruits that came in. You'd read about them. You read your Street and Smith's college basketball preview, and you had kind of heard about some of these guys. But Midnight Madness used to be the literal college basketball has started, and you're getting your brain back on hoops. We cover this all year now. When Sadiq White committed over the summer, Mike Waters and I are right here doing a live podcast, right? The coverage, social media, of course. You know these guys. You've seen them in AAU tournaments. You've watched their YouTube videos. You know who they are. So that takes a lot of the shine away from it as well, because while we haven't seen them play formally, you know who these guys are. It's not, I'm literally going to this thing to see what Donnie Freeman looks like, right? So you have to think and incorporate all that into it, but that's what the Syracuse Sports Insiders are for. So you guys send me your ideas. We'll forward it on to Syracuse, and maybe we'll help solve the problem. But for now, this year, there will be no Orange Madness. From Jack W., who says, what was wrong with the old Orange Madness, speaking of which? They seem pretty standard stuff, and why couldn't any problems be resolved in the last 6 months? I wanted to focus on that second part. Was nobody thinking about this the last few months? Did they show up like, oh yeah, that thing? Right? Kind of fell between the cracks. Autry saying he wanted to put his own spin on it. Well, okay, you had an entire offseason. You have a whole marketing department up there. Nobody thought of that. Nobody from last year to now. When you have a big event, one of the big things you have to do is the day after, sit down and what went right, what went wrong, what do we change for next year, right? So nobody was thinking about all this up till this point, right? I know they're busy up there. We're all busy, but I think everybody just kind of let it fall between the cracks. Antonio goes back to a football question. He says, Brent, were you surprised that Syracuse is not ranked after such a topsy-turvy week? In the poll, of course, all the losses. I feel that even though Syracuse had 6 votes, they're ranked a bit low. I was surprised they didn't get more votes. I'm not surprised they're not ranked, because to vault from practically no votes into the poll, you've got to pull off a bigger upset than beating the 25th ranked team in the country. Now, that being said, the reason I'm surprised they didn't get more votes, as a former voter and knowing how the process works, the best way in the poll is to beat somebody in it, right? A lot of the losses you talked about were in the top 10, 11, right? So, yeah, Alabama and some of those teams, they're going to slide down, but it's not sliding enough teams out of the poll. So keep winning. You'll get in there. Beat NC State, go 5-1, beat Pitt. Now, beating Pitt would be the key thing, because Pitt is in the poll. If Pitt is still ranked and Syracuse piles up a few more votes if they beat NC State, you beat Pitt on a Thursday night, one of those primetime games that everybody can see, right? Voters are so busy. They can only do and see so much. So those primetime games pop. They stand out. They stick in your memory a little bit more. You beat Pitt on a Thursday night, you're going to be ranked. So they're not there yet. I wasn't surprised that they didn't get in, Antonio. I was a little surprised they didn't get more votes, but you stay on the path, and Syracuse will once again be a ranked basketball team. Thanks for all your great questions and comments. As always, guys, love to highlight them here on the podcast, and of course, love to interact with you as a Syracuse Sports Insider. So make sure you sign up today. Just text the word orange to 315-847-3895. You can also sign up on syracuse.com. The link is a join subtext. You know what? I should pull that up officially for you guys so I don't screw that up. Give me a sec here, and I will do that. But there's an easy link. I put it in all my stories as well. You can find the link to sign up here. It is joinsubtext.com/Syracuse Sports. And while I'm talking about it, I should put it up on the screen for our friends that are watching on YouTube here. So give me 1 second, and I will do that for you guys. The text is a very easy way to do it, but this website as well, joinsubtext.com/Syracuse Sports, a very easy way to sign up today to become a Syracuse Sports Insider. In the meantime, hope you are subscribed and following on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. So when a new episode of Syracuse Sports pops up, there it is for you to listen on demand. Emily Leiker and I will be back on Saturday night after the Orange take on NC State. That's an 8 o'clock kickoff, so another late night on the East Coast. A lot of night games for Syracuse. UNLV, NC State, Pitt, all in prime time, baby. So we'll be here live after that matchup, and your comments and opinions and everything that you thought about Syracuse NC State. Certainly welcome on that podcast. We'll be back on Saturday, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Syracuse Sports. Thanks to Mike Waters for joining us. Thanks to you, of course, for checking out the show. And thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders. My name is Brent Axe. It's all been presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. We'll catch you next time. And let's let the exploding flowers take us out.